Hey everybody, July 28th, 2025, here with your after hours recap. Today was another poor breath day. I don't want to make too much of that. You had semiconductors still acting awesome, right? Nvidia new high, AMD, just absolutely rocking recently for the last month. SMCI, absolutely massive day. So it's just really nice to see super nice action in the semi space. Everything else effectively down or flat, and that was just kind of the theme around the market, right? You had 34% of stocks advancing, 62% of stocks declining, and that was just, again, a pretty typical theme in today's market. I didn't think anything totally broken or wrong out there. In my opinion, stocks just need to base out a little bit longer, right? The aerospace and defense sector, which is a sector that I really like. I look at a name like KTOS, which has been leading for a while. Guys, this thing has gone fairly vertical, so some longer digestion I think is, healthy. Obviously, a name like Netflix, which reported last week, you've just kind of been floating lower below the 50-day, and below the 50-day, in my opinion, is not a place that I want to try and look for a bottom in a stock. And this one just kind of continues to steadily sell off. You got Spotify earnings as well, but my expectation is that one kind of follows in the footsteps of Netflix. Right now, reported a few days ago, and you get a really nice reaction just completely to get sold off 2 days in a row. So it's been kind of a hit and miss with earnings season. We are kind of coming into the thick of it this week. This week will probably give us a little bit more gauge on direction going forward, at least in the short term. Again, I don't want to make too much of a stink about bad breath. It's 3 days in a row of some poor breath, but again, semiconductors led. On flip side, banks digested. Yes, there are a few things that if you are more speculative, small cap, mid cap trader, finally some of the quantums look like they are just hugging for dear life onto the 50 simple moving average. And you lose the 50 simple moving average on something like IONQ, that could start to get a little bit tricky. And then again, not that they are in any kind of way bad, but I do own Oklo as a long. Do we start to reject this left side peak 73.69? I don't really know, but NNE, as a laggard, very, very poor action today, closing at the lows of the range. SMR, again, looks completely fine, not a laggard. Looks great in terms of the small and mid cap names. GEV continues to be an absolute monster. So, there are some positives out there. The stocks that have been strong, some of them continue to just be strong. Some of them are digesting if you're a KTOS. And then again, some of them are coming down if you're a Netflix. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Semiconductors continue to be the glue for the market. There was a little bit of negative price action, in my opinion, in the crypto space. You had a really nice gap up in Bitcoin, and I do have a long in IBIT. And then you just kind of sold off most of the day, and then all of a sudden, your MSTR rolls over into red. Not the best action. Do we hold on to the 50 going forward? I've already given my opinion on this name. I personally don't think that we go and retest those November highs. I would be happy to be wrong. That would just give us another sector to trade. But when I look at an MSTR, when I look at an IRIN, this isn't pretty per se. So it's just, tried to break out on the 21st, rejected, continuation lower. So it's not the prettiest, like I said, but, Bitcoin, it's just not doing anything great. It's just digesting here. You had this little squirt higher out of what I thought was a very nice base, and then just immediate digestion. I don't know if that's good or bad. Like I said, I own IBIT, so I don't want to make a big stink out of something that I'm long. I want to stay optimistic that it's going to go on to work, but we'll see. If we start to take out, effectively Friday's lows on IBIT, I will not be hanging out for much longer. Now I'll pull this one up just for reference. So, if we start to effectively lose, Friday's lows, really the level that I was watching was 65.77, and I wanted price to close above that. It did just that on Friday, get a little bit of a gap up. At this point, are we just going sideways too long? I'm not sure. But I did not like the price action in, the crypto miners and the crypto related names today. But again, really no big deal. Obviously, coin these past few days, and this one has earnings coming up. Just pulling back right into the 20. This is the thing too. We're in a bull market. There's no denying we're in a bull market. So if we can actually begin to reclaim the 20 simple moving average, I would actually be more curious for coin on the long side and not really looking at this name as a potential short. In fact, gun to head, I would assume it could go higher going forward. And again, on the flip side, you do have some poor action in a name like Circle, and I know that these things are kind of commingled. I know that a bunch of coins earnings come from Circle. I know Circle's in that stable coin space. I don't really know too much more about the relationship, but I do know that some of coins earnings come from Circle. So that is kind of something to note going forward. CoreWeave is one that continues to act very poorly here, just continuing to break down. I mean, this is already getting pretty nasty. I saw that they did an offering senior note 9%, which is just kind of nutty. So it's as bad as MSTR, but we'll see what really comes with these names going forward. I personally don't love the trend here. Feels like we're trying to go lower, which is just it's just kind of crappy. I know some people on the pullback were looking to get long, but really it hasn't given any opportunity, not even an inkling of a higher low. So for me, it's just hands off on a CoreWeave or even a Circle going forward, at least for now, until it can build some sort of higher low. The travel stocks, I think, still continue to look pretty good, right? Your Win still looks pretty dang good. This looks pretty awesome for now. Your LVS looks pretty dang good. So don't really want to argue with these names. They are what appear to be in some uptrends. RCL, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, has earnings this week. This thing has been one of the best stocks in the market effectively since April lows. It has doubled. In fact, it's been one of the best stocks since we bottomed on COVID or after COVID. This stock has just been straight up for the last couple years. I don't know how much longer this thing's got to go, considering earnings winners typically only move for 8 quarters. So we're kind of getting there in terms of does this name begin to come down? And then again, on the flip side, you've got some pretty poor action in a name like Costco. You're now starting to live under the 200 simple moving average. This name has also made a really, really massive move up. What starts to happen? What becomes the narrative? If a name like Costco breaks down, I don't know. I personally don't care. We'll see what the narrative becomes, and if this thing can actually reclaim its 200 simple moving average, I would feel a whole lot better about it, going forward in terms of it relating to the consumer. But again, it's not my job to try and think that through. It's just my job to try and figure out where money's going, where money's leaving. Money is leaving a name like Netflix. It's leaving a name like Costco. Meanwhile, it's going to places like semiconductors, and they continue to act absolutely awesome. We'll see kind of what continues to happen in the market. We will just take it one day at a time. Like I said, if you weren't a semiconductor today, you basically did nothing. QS as a battery stock a few days ago, again, more on the quote-unquote speculative side, just acting heavy ever since earnings, and then a little bit more in after hours on the move down. So does this start to maybe take effect in a name like ENVX? I don't know. Does that start to affect an AMPX, another battery name? Again, I don't know, even though I think this one's wildly extended. So we'll see. CLS today, absolutely awesome earnings. Please, someone kick me. I did own this thing at $100, and I no longer own it. Yeah, this one hurts in a big way, so got very impatient with it, and it is a huge, huge lesson learned. But again, just trying to take it one day at a time. I am still long ARC. I'm still long CCL. I'm long IBIT. I'm long Toast. I'm long Oklo, and I am long Tesla. So we will just see if we can continue to get ourselves repositioned and get more longs into the portfolio. But then on the flip side, like I said, I'm not just going to marry stocks as they begin to pull back and then break below key moving averages. And at the same time, I'm trying to be proactive and ask myself, what are the things that are, kind of slipping and breaking below key moving averages, and then maybe looking to short those into moves back up into those declining moving averages. So we will see. Take it one day at a time, and I will see you guys bright and early for pre-market prep. Cheers.